Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight we will be debating the question, should the special status of Jammu and Kashmir have been revoked? Speaking in the affirmative is Mr. J. Panda, the National Vice President of the BJP. Speaking in the negative is Dr. Sitaram Yechuri, leader of the Communist Party of India, Marxist. The debate will take place in two stages. In the first stage, we will begin with opening submissions from each speaker, lasting up to 10 minutes. Following these, each speaker will have an opportunity to reply for up to 5 minutes. The second stage will involve questions from me and from you, the audience. Please note that since each speaker is obliged to answer each question, questions must be directed to both speakers. Your questions cannot be directed to any one speaker or to one side of the debate, or they will be ruled out of order. With that, we will begin the debate. Mr. Panda, you may begin your initial submissions.
Thank you, Mr. President, and ladies and gentlemen. When we talk about this topic, often it gets referred to as a crisis in Kashmir. And I think right at the outset, it's important to point out that it's not as if a crisis suddenly happened in Kashmir 3 months ago with the constitutional amendment to Article 370 in India. The reality is that Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir, has been in crisis for 72 years. And in particular, over the last 3 decades or so, with about 42,000 people having been killed related to terrorism. What is happening now is a decision by India to resolve the crisis, not just to manage it, not just to deal with its symptoms, but to go down to the root causes. Now, this is an emotive issue, and it has many narratives that have developed around it, both in Jammu and Kashmir and around the world. In this room, almost all of you are likely to have strong views on this. The country of Pakistan has been pushing a certain narrative around the world for decades. And other global powers have used the situation in Jammu and Kashmir to leverage it for their own geopolitical interests. I'm here to speak in the affirmative on the motion and to put forth the view of the Indian state, of which I'm a member of the governing party. I want to start by saying that the intent behind this decision is not about triumphalism. It is about a commitment to take the hard path to try and resolve this. The Indian state, the Indian government, is committed to doing everything to winning the hearts and minds of the people of Kashmir in this transitional process. One thing that we must keep in mind when we do that is the facts, which sometimes get lost in the heat of debate around the world. Fact number one is that this is related to how independence happened for India. After a long struggle, when India became independent, it was also partitioned brutally, and it brought about the creation of the state of Pakistan and also what is now Bangladesh. The circumstances and the rules that prevailed for this partition and for independence applied to everyone, all stakeholders, and especially when we talk about the princely states, of which there were more than 550, it applied to all of them. You can no more question the accession of Jammu and Kashmir to India than you can about any of the other hundreds of princely states which joined either India or Pakistan or today are in Bangladesh. So this is important because in the narratives out there, sometimes you hear the phrase Indian-occupied Kashmir. India, in fact, is the only state that is a legitimate successor of which Jammu and Kashmir is a part. On the other hand, without any legitimacy whatsoever, Pakistan invaded Jammu and Kashmir and still holds a part of it, and that indeed is Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. And more than that, a part of that was given away by Pakistan to China. So you can refer to a part of Jammu and Kashmir as Chinese-occupied Kashmir. These are facts. Let me come to Article 370. This is an internal matter for India because it was a part of the Indian constitution. It has no bearing on any international agreements or any arrangements that India has with its neighbors or with any situation around the world. It doesn't impact, doesn't change anything around the world. It's internal to India. And it is the only article in the Indian constitution which had the word temporary before it. Now, we can argue whether temporary should mean weeks or months or years or, as in this case, many decades, but that is beside the point. The point is, the Indian Parliament has amended this as it had been amended earlier, but this time much more drastically. But democracy still prevails. Everybody in Jammu and Kashmir continues to have the vote, both for local elections as well as national elections. It is important to note that because of the special status under Article 370, 106 laws passed by the Indian Parliament, progressive modern laws, did not apply in Jammu and Kashmir. So also important Supreme Court judgments. Do you know what this means? It means laws protecting the rights of women did not apply. It means the laws prohibiting child marriage did not apply. It means that laws requiring mandatory education did not apply. It means the Supreme Court judgment providing protections and rights to the LGBTQ community did not apply. If you stand for any of these, if you stand for women's rights, if you stand for child rights, if you stand for universal education, if you stand for LGBTQ rights, in fact, you stand for the decision that has been taken to amend Article 370. It provided shelter for terrorism. It provided shelter for enormous corruption. Billions of dollars were spent over the decades. In fact, if you look at a per capita investment, the Indian state invested 4 times per capita in Jammu and Kashmir over 7 decades compared to the rest of India. And you do not see the results of that in terms of infrastructure, in terms of industry, in terms of jobs. This has to change. It also provided the shelter for the kind of separatism and terrorism that did ethnic cleansing of the minority Pandit community. Many hundreds were killed, and hundreds of thousands were forced to leave Jammu and Kashmir. Let us see this as the unfinished business of partition. When partition happened, because of the extreme violence, restrictions were placed in many parts of the subcontinent. In India, you had restrictions in the Punjab, in Rajasthan, in Gujarat, in Delhi, in Assam, in Bengal. This doesn't count restrictions that happened in Pakistan and what is now Bangladesh. People understood this because it helped prevent massive violence. Finally, with Jammu and Kashmir getting integrated fully into the Indian state, whose constitution guarantees equal rights to every citizen, irrespective of religion, caste, creed, gender. This is a transitional period. We had a choice, India had a choice between temporary restrictions and permanent loss of large numbers of lives. Do keep in mind that starting 24 hours after this change, the restrictions have been gradually removed. People in Jammu and Kashmir are free to move around, the general public. They are visiting other parts of India as well, and people from other parts of India have been visiting Jammu and Kashmir. The phone lines which had been restricted, gradually the landlines were opened up. Now the cell phones are operational. Television and media has been operational throughout. In concluding, I would like to say the following. In the Indian Constitution, with the equal rights that are given to everybody, all Indians, all citizens, have the same rights and the same obligations. This is a country, and since I'm talking about the continuing and the unfinished part of partition, it is important to note, the country was partitioned on the now discredited two-nation theory. And those who believed in that theory, who created another nation, have seen the minorities in that nation go in Pakistan from 23% at the time of independence to less than 3%. The minorities have been decimated, and that country has stopped counting its minorities in its census. In India, on the other hand, the Muslims who constituted 10% of the population at independence are today 14%. But it's not just about demographics or numbers. Minorities of all shades in India have flourished. They've been the President of India, to Prime Minister, to the head of the armed forces, to the Chief Justice of India, to superstars in the world of sports and movies and billionaires. We look forward to the true development of Jammu and Kashmir, not to forget Ladakh, and to see a region under the world's largest democracy have the same rights, obligations, and freedoms as all the other 1.3 billion people. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Panda. Dr. Yechuri, you may begin your submissions.
Thank you. Well, within a few hours from now, the state of Jammu and Kashmir as a state of union of India will be history. Tomorrow morning, the state will be divided into 2 union territories, centrally administered by the center. And what I'm proposing here to state and share with all of you, in opposition to this motion, is that this opposition comes from an Indian patriot who believes in one book of India, that is, this is the Constitution of India. Religions may have various books of theirs, but for Indian patriots, there's only one book. And if this is violated, then as a patriot, I stand here to protect this. I have taken an oath on this twice to enter the parliament to be a lawmaker, to safeguard and protect and implement this constitution. Now that is being violated in Kashmir. And that is where my opposition comes from. So opposition here does not mean that we are anti-national. Opposition means that we are extremely patriotic. We want our nation to be a secular democratic republic. And that character cannot be allowed to change. That is my opening comment to make here. Secondly, I wish participating in this debate would be somebody from Kashmir. I would have wanted my leader from Kashmir, Yusuf Tarigami, to come here, but he is under house arrest. He is under house arrest, detained even today. All the political leaders who fought to be part of India, who have been integral to this constitution, who've taken the oath on this constitution and entered the Indian parliament, they are arrested. They cannot move today. And this is something that is a violation of democracy, and this is something that is not permissible. It's 3 months now, almost. There's no public transport there. The shops remain closed. The schools and colleges are open technically, no students or teachers. The hospitals, shortage of medicines. If this is human rights, then I'm sorry, this is not the sort of integration that this constitution promises. And that is a violation there. And this talk of terrorism, yes, cross-border terrorism has been there since independence. We've all been fighting it. And that is something that is non-negotiable, it's not acceptable, is the enemy of India, terrorism. That will be fought. But who are the people today incarcerated? Muhammad Yusuf Tarigami, my party leader. For 24 years, he's been elected from a district which has been designated by the government of India as the worst terrorist-prone district in India. He's fought the terrorists there, got the people's support, and got elected. He's under house arrest. 4 times there was a terrorist attack on his life. He survived, but his family members lost their lives. His security lost their lives. And he's the one, by keeping him under house arrest, you're fighting terrorism. People who are fighting terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir are under arrest. And that gives a free hand for terrorism. And unfortunately, yesterday, you saw the terrorist attack condemned by all of us, where 5 people lost their lives, migrant workers. And this is something that cannot be allowed to continue. Thirdly, what I want to say here is that the special status for Kashmir is product of a historical circumstances. Now, those historical circumstances, when all the princely states were asked to join the Union of India or Pakistan, 3 of them chose not to, join either Hyderabad, Junagadh, and J&K. Negotiations were on with all three, and finally the product of this negotiation was Article 370. This Article 370 is something that emerged out of those negotiations. It was temporary. It was temporary because it had to be replaced by a permanent article that was to be endorsed by the Constituent Assembly of J&K. And that was unfortunately not allowed to happen all these years because nobody from the Indian ruling classes and establishment wanted the autonomy of Jammu and Kashmir to be independent of our constitution. So over the years, 370 has been eroded to the extent that 94 of the 97 central subjects for legislation today under the constitution are already applicable in J&K. And therefore, to say that this has been some sort of an independent enclave is absolutely incorrect. And the special status is not only for Jammu and Kashmir. There are 10 articles in Indian Constitution today. Article 371, Article 371A to I, all of them give special status to more than 12 states of India. So special status is not something very special only to J&K. And the question of land, people now can buy land in Jammu and Kashmir. Today you can't buy land in Uttarakhand, a BJP ruled state. You can't buy land in Himachal Pradesh, a BJP ruled state. Why? Because of special provisions for that state. You can't buy in the Northeast. Why? Because of special provisions. They contain, and that is what brought about India's unity among this diversity. And therefore, it is now today not acceptable to say that Jammu and Kashmir's total integration will solve the problem of either terrorism or will solve the problem of development. Already, J&K on every single human development index is higher than the Indian average. So to say J&K would be allowed to develop further, that's good, but it's not that because it was backward. It was already much more advanced than the rest of India. Then, the manner in which this was done. 3 years ago, I was a member of an Indian parliamentary delegation led by the then Union Home Minister to visit Kashmir in the wake of disturbances. We came back and promised to the people of India and Kashmir that we will immediately solve the problem by starting a political process of dialogue, a dialogue with all the stakeholders. For 3 years, nothing has been done. Then one fine morning, you just erase J&K from history. Now that is not acceptable. That is not part of India's democracy. So therefore, I am opposing this motion because Kashmir is an integral part of India. When Kashmir is an integral part, it's not only the physical assets of Kashmir integral part. It is Kashmiri people who are integral part. If they cannot be emotionally integrated, then you cannot have Kashmir as an integral part of India. Today, instead of being integrated, they have been alienated further. That is going to be a problem that we'll have to face in the future. Therefore, I conclude by saying, I oppose this motion because this is an assault on the Indian Constitution, assault on democracy, assault on secularism, assault on federalism, and this is something for an Indian patriot, it is not acceptable, and therefore I oppose this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yechuri. Mr. Panda, you have 5 minutes for your response.
Thank you. There were so many factual errors presented by my friend that I will have to rather speed up. Now, despite my very cordial relations with Sitaram Yechuri, with whom I've had the pleasure of serving in Parliament, I'll have to point out these things. I'm glad that he swears by the Constitution, but many of his fellow travelers haven't always been so. The communists have been known to be opposed to the state of India. They opposed India when we were at war with China in the early 60s. People owing allegiance to the same school of thought, the Naxalites and the Maoists, have been involved in armed rebellion, killing many, many thousands around the country to try to overthrow the state of India. That the constitutional amendment has been done properly has been attested to by some of the brightest legal minds in the country. You can Google and look it up. This is being now adjudicated in the Supreme Court, and of course we will all await the judgment, but I'm telling you what is already out there. When he says that 3 states chose not to sign the instrument of accession, there was no such option. In the same rules that applied to everybody, they had no option. It was many more than 3. He's forgetting the state of Mayurbhanj in my state of Odisha, which refused to sign for several months. But ultimately, the choice which was laid down in those rules and those circumstances, you had to go with one or the other. And it's not true that 12 other states have special status similar to what Jammu and Kashmir had. No other state had a separate constitution. No other state had a separate flag. It is not true that you can't buy land in other states. You have restrictions. He referred to Himachal Pradesh. In many other states, you have residency qualifications. You have to spend time in that state to demonstrate your commitment to that area. In Jammu and Kashmir, if you are a woman of local origin, Kashmiri woman, you lost your rights to inherit and to buy land if you married somebody outside. Do we want to support that kind of a regime here? My friend Mr. Yachuri talks about Jammu and Kashmir being higher on social indices than the rest of the country. It's just wrong. Let me point out. On education, Jammu and Kashmir was nearly 15% behind the Indian average and 45% behind the best Indian states in terms of literacy. Now, on some measures, Jammu and Kashmir came up to the average of the Indian socio-economic indicators. But you know why? Not because there is a bustling economy that makes it possible, but because of handouts from Delhi. That has to change. Jammu and Kashmir has to have its own sustainable economy, and development has to take place. Not, how can you have a situation where, now he talks about the restraints and the detentions. I have pointed out this is temporary. I have pointed out if this had happened in 1947, people would have understood that this was to stop violence, and violence has been successfully stopped. The handful of people who have been killed in the last 3 months have been killed by terrorists, have been killed by people owing allegiance to UN-recognized terrorist organizations operating from Pakistan, such as Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed, not by the Indian forces. And I think it is important when he talks about individuals, who are really fighting terrorism, the people who have died. Let me give you 3 names. Muhammad Ayub Pandit, police officer, shot by terrorists outside a mosque. Rifleman Aurangzeb, abducted while on holiday, killed by terrorists. Shujat Bukhari, distinguished journalist, killed by terrorists. So this is not a matter to be made light of. These are only 3 of the 42,000 that have been sacrificed in this manner. Let me give you the name of Radhika Gill, a former untouchable, a Dalit community young lady, 3 generations having lived in Jammu and Kashmir. Because of Article 370, the only job she would be allowed to have in Jammu and Kashmir is as a janitor. She gave up her studies because she didn't see any future in it. That will change today with the amendment to Article 370.
Thank you, Mr. Panda. Dr. Yachuri, your reply.
First point is that you brought in issues that are totally extraneous, my dear friend. Talking about communists, about China, about etc. I'm sticking to the topic here. So do not force me also to say things which are unsavory at the moment, that there are members of your party that hail the murderer of Mahatma Gandhi as a national patriot. Please don't get into that terrain. Okay, now that we are talking of the developmental indicators that you said is very low in Kashmir. Let me give you the statistics, Government of India. Life expectancy at birth in J&K is 74. In your state of Gujarat, it is 69. Under 5 mortality rate is 26 in J&K. It is 33 in Gujarat. Total fertility rate, children per woman, is 1.7 in J&K. It is 2.2 in Gujarat. Number of girls aged 15 to 19 with 8 years of schooling. You spoke of education. In J&K, it is 87%. In Gujarat, it is 75%. Number of underweight children in J&K is 17. In Gujarat, it's 39. Adult women with low BMI, body mass index, is 12 in J&K. It is 27 in Gujarat. Number of children fully immunized is 75 in J&K. It is 50 in Gujarat. Percentage of rural population below poverty line, 2011-12 figures, that is the latest available. J&K was 12, Gujarat was 22. Wages of male rural workers, J&K is 209 rupees per day in 2011-12, in Gujarat is 116. So tell me, who is more progress and who is less? So let us not fabricate facts. We are arguing on the basis, and both of us have argued a number of times earlier, when you were a member of the Indian Parliament, when you were, of course, elected then from the Biju Janata Dal, but now you are with the BJP. But all that apart, but the fact that you are talking about the number of deaths from terrorists, I can reel out in Jammu and Kashmir, 108 members of the CPIM have died by attacks by terrorists. That list is all there. All that I'm asking this government is, people who have stood by India, stood by this constitution, taken oath on this constitution, they are under arrest today. And those who have not done that job, who have been arguing for an independent Kashmir or the other way around, they are free, and thousands of innocent people are today in jails. Now, what are we talking about democracy and human rights? For 90 days, if you don't have internet connection, in Oxford, in this hall, you tell me, if you don't have your web connection for 90 minutes, not 90 days, will all of us survive? Or any one of us survive? Imagine 90 days of no web connection, no contact with the outside world. You don't know what is happening. A son studying in a distant place doesn't know if the grandfather has died or not. When he finally knows, he knows that he's already been buried. The job has been over. Is that human rights? Is that integrating for future development? Now the question is, if you're talking of democracy, if you're talking of secularism, if you're talking of federalism, the rights of the states, these are issues that are enshrined in our constitution that are inviolable. But they are being violated today. That is my response. And finally, I would only like to say, with your permission, Mr. Moderator, for a minute, that what is happening in Kashmir is not confined only to Kashmir, it's part of a larger project. You have what's happening with the National Citizen Register in Assam. You have the threats to conduct it all over the country. You have a citizenship amendment bill that is going to give citizenship to everybody but the Muslims, which is a complete violation of this holy book, holy in the sense of the constitutional holy book. Now, this whole package is something that is not acceptable to anybody who has taken an oath on this constitution and swears by this constitution. And that is an Indian patriot speaking for India, not against India. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yechuri. The speakers will now have the opportunity, if they wish, to ask the opposing speaker a question for which they will have 5 minutes to answer. We'll start with Mr. Panda. Would you like to ask Dr. Yechuri a question?
Yes. After asking me not to widen the scope of the discussion, you took it on to everything else. I should be asking you a series of questions, but I'll ask you only one. You said that there's a violation of the Constitution. We'll leave that to the Supreme Court. But when you said that India is not giving citizenship to Muslims, you are hiding something very important. We are talking about refugees here. And it's a globally accepted principle that other than economic refugees, those who come because they are facing persecution, they get a higher priority. People, minorities in some surrounding nations who've been decimated from 23% to less than 3% ought to get priority. And that's the basis on which these refugees are being, the proposal is there to give them. Is that not a fact?
I'll respond. No, it isn't, because it is not a fact. Now tell me, for instance, Rohingyas, they are Muslim. If they come to India after persecution there, will you accept them as Indian citizens and give them Indian citizenship? No, we will not. They are Muslims. So the point is that refugees who have come for any reason, who are we to judge why the refugee is a refugee? Why have they come? Why have they left their country and come? Because of various reasons, persecution, of course, various other reasons. So therefore, it is wrong to say that I will pick and choose who will be given citizenship, who will not be. And in any case, as you yourself quoted, we informally call ourselves, I call him Jay, he calls me Sita. So that's how, that's how it happened. So, I mean, you yourself quoted this constitution, saying it guarantees equality, citizenship, fundamental rights, quote, irrespective of caste, creed, or sex, a language of the 1950s, but it's caste, creed, or gender today. But the original sentence is that. If that is the case, how can you discriminate granting citizenship on the basis of religion of the concerned person? That is something that is violative of this constitution, I believe, and that is something it is not going to be acceptable to me, at least as an Indian patriot. Thank you.
I have explained the proposal for granting priority to citizens, to refugees who come facing persecution versus refugees who come for economic advantages. This is a principle that exists all around the world. In fact, this is the basis on which the country was divided. This is the basis of the two-nation theory. And if you claim that people who created their own country so that they could be in majority are being persecuted there's really no logical answer to that. So I will only end with that, but I will again say that it is, I'm happy that you keep referring to the Constitution. Everything that we have done is by the book. The Article 370 has been amended twice before, exactly with the T's crossed and the I's dotted, exactly in the same manner that it has been done this time. It is not that we were unaware that it would be challenged in the Supreme Court. So, and as I said, please do Google. Some of the most well-known legal minds in the country are saying diametrically opposite things to what Sita was saying about whether this is constitutional or not. I've pointed out that there is no such project to discriminate against people. I've pointed out our country is a country that has enabled equal rights to all citizens throughout the country. And if it can happen, that we can create this platform in the rest of the country, it's not correct to think that we would not be able to do it in Jammu and Kashmir.
Dr. Yechuri, you may now ask Mr. Panda a question.
Yes. I only want to ask you, if the Constitution has been followed, of course, 370 has been amended a number of times, and as I said, 94 of the 97 provisions under the central list for legislation are now applicable to J&K even before this happened. That was possible only through amendments. It's not that sort of an amendment. You are amending 370 in a manner in which a state has been dissolved. You have converted that into 2 union territories, centrally administered. And how was this done? Article 3 of this Constitution says, no boundary of any state of the Union of India can be altered without the concurrence of the elected legislative assembly of the concerned state. Now, the state's elected legislative assembly was dissolved, central rule imposed. When the elections for the parliament were held, elections to the assembly were asked for, simultaneously they should have been held as the normal practice. They were not held. By not having an elected state assembly, you have transferred that power for concurrence to a governor centrally appointed who is not elected, centrally appointed, and that governor gives the concurrence for dissolving the state, and therefore the state is dissolved on the basis of that concurrence by the parliament through a resolution. Is that not a subterfuge of the constitution? I'm asking you. What the courts may decide. But is that not, and let me tell you, diametrically opposite views, that is the beauty of democracy. And I want that to continue. I want that to continue, that there should be diametrically opposite opinions. And that is what makes democracy thrive.
Sita keeps insisting on trying to be a constitutional expert here. I'm going to counter him, but as I said, we will leave it to the Supreme Court to decide. And I'll counter him by saying this, that the provisions in the Constitution apply for precisely this, that when a government could not be formed at the state level because no party had majority and no coalitions existed, it is the governor's duty to sign on that. It has been done before as well. Most importantly, just a few weeks before Article 370 was amended, when this issue came up to Parliament, that there is no government in the then state of Jammu and Kashmir, and that it has to be under governor's rule, it was unanimously decided, everybody decided, that exactly as per the terms of that bill proposed, which was section 356, it specifically does what you are now opposing. So, these contradictions are there. We will leave it to the Supreme Court. You raised a very interesting point, that Jammu and Kashmir was changed from a state to a union territory. Let me reiterate this. It still remains part of democratic India. All citizens in Jammu and Kashmir continue to have the vote for both local and for national elections. The difference is this between a state, Ladakh in any case wanted to be separate. They've become a separate union territory. And because they were also suffering under Article 370, Ladakh has a different demographic, and the people there were not being allowed to learn in their mother tongue. And so they've become a separate union territory. But Jammu and Kashmir becoming a union territory, there's only one difference from being a state. And that is that the security will be better coordinated between union forces and the local regional forces. And because of the complexity of the security forces coordination, we have an increased challenge. We had an increased challenge. That is the only difference. There's no democracy going away. There is no vote being taken away. There is nothing that the people of Jammu and Kashmir lose vis-a-vis the earlier status except closer coordination between the security forces.
Yeah, you see, democracy is not only voting. Democracy means much larger things. For 90 days, I can't meet my relation. I had to move after failing twice when I go to the state of Jammu and Kashmir, failing twice to leave the Srinagar airport because I was physically not allowed to by the security forces. There is now a stage-managed set of European MPs that have been allowed to go on a touristic visit to J&K, only to say that everything is all good and fine. But Indian MPs are not allowed. We are not allowed. Now, is that democracy? Am I, as the head of a national political party, not allowed to meet my central committee member, a 4-time elected MLA there, in order to inquire about his health? Then I had to move a habeas corpus petition, which the Honorable Court decided. Habeas corpus means in Latin, bring the body. Instead, the Honorable Court decided that the petitioner will go and examine the body. And I was sent to examine the body and file an affidavit on the basis of which he was allowed to leave Srinagar to come for his medical checkup. Went back in house arrest. Now, is that democracy? 90 days, no public transport, no communications. Is that democracy? That is my question. Democracy is not only that you have right to vote. Democracy is the right to live. The right to live a dignified life, a right to life and liberty. That is all democracy is about, and that is what is being violated.
Thank you, Dr. Uchuri. We will now be having questions from the audience. I reiterate that questions must be answered by both speakers, so must be addressed to both speakers. They will have 3 minutes each to reply to each question. And I look to members in the front row, who I'm looking at now. Wait for the microphone, stand up while you ask your question, please.
Thank you. So as Mr. Yechuri mentioned right now, there is a panel of European Union Member of Parliaments in Kashmir to address the ground situation in Kashmir. And they have also come out with a statement supporting the stand of the government of India. But India's stated policy has always been that Kashmir is an internal matter of India, and so we won't support any outside involvement in our internal matters. So given this context, do you think inviting the MPs to Kashmir was a diplomatic masterstroke, or was it the biggest diplomatic blunder to internationalize the issue?
Three minutes, right? Yes. I want to preface my answer by saying something. You know, all these decades, India had an attitude that since we are the legitimate successor state to post-partition of colonial India, that we don't really have to go and explain our case. And perhaps that was wrong, because other stakeholders, particularly Pakistan, have been making the case for many decades. And I don't expect that people will change their minds immediately, because there are long-held positions. But I hope with this process, we can begin to show facts of all sides and gradually have a process of explaining to people. Now, India, I think, made a mistake by taking the matter to the UN at that point, and that internationalized the matter in 1948. Now, having outsiders come and visit is not internationalizing it. It's when you allow them authority, you ask them to mediate, or you ask them to take a call on how you should resolve your issues. That is internationalizing. Because there are a lot of fake narratives out there. One thing that was being said is that the shops are closed. Indeed, the terrorists have been threatening shopkeepers and have killed a handful of shopkeepers and traders for daring to open their shops. They are bustling at night, and now they have begun opening in the daytime. It is important for people to come and see that this narrative that everything is closed, that medicines are not available, that this fake narrative is exposed. Yes, initially the phone lines were closed. As I said, the landlines have been back on for a month. The cell phones have been back on for 2 weeks. Detentions have been made because people went around making incendiary statements in the lead up to the constitutional amendment. And look, let me again reiterate, thousands of lives were at risk, as happened during partition in 1947-48, if these measures were not taken. So no, there is no internationalization going on. Indian MPs, in fact, are free to visit. Let me give you a distinction here. And this is the disingenuity with which some of these arguments are being made. The governor of Jammu and Kashmir, in fact, asked Indian opposition leaders to visit, but some of them wanted to go and have public events. And that is a risk during this transition period that should not be allowed, because it could lead to security issues. I can assure you this is a temporary period, and look at the restrictions that have been gradually eased over the last 3 months, and look forward, and you can see that this is not going to be a permanent thing.
Yes, I think this was a public relations exercise conducted by some NGO that's favorable to this government to bring these MPs in their individual capacities to come and visit Kashmir. European Union has made it very clear that these are not an official delegation. 24 of the 27 of them belong to ultra-right-wing nationalist parties from Europe. All 6 from France are from Le Pen's party. All from Germany are from the Alternative for Deutschland, and all of us know what they stand for. And like this, I mean, this is the collection of people. Now, what was the purpose of this? That only they can explain. The NGO who invited them, their offices have been closed after the visit. Nobody answers. The closed gates are being shown on television. There is nobody answering. Who invited them? Who gave the audience with the Prime Minister of India? Who internationally publicized this fact? Now, this is not asking for international intervention. Of course not. But this, when Indian MPs are not allowed to go, And it is wrong to say that the governor invited and we refused to go. In fact, I drafted the letter sitting and when we were under arrest, judicial custody in the airport with Rahul Gandhi, to whom the governor had personally written, saying, please come and see for yourself what is happening here. And I said, I'll come with my fellow colleagues from the parliament. We all went, 11 of us from 9 political parties. We all went, and all of us were refused to leave, not allowed to leave the Srinagar airport. So you see, this is what is the problem. I mean, only those chosen ones who will speak well with the government are the ones given the permission to go. I think this delegation that you're talking of falls in that category.
Thank you, Deputy Chair. We'll be having another question from the audience. And we'll go just here, second from the aisle in the front row.
Hello. My question is in regards to the legitimacy of Kashmir. One of the major issues that Pakistan poses is the fact that there hasn't been a plebiscite since our independence. What is your view on that? And do you think that rather than just stating that Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir is an integral part of India, rather than if you hold a plebiscite, probably it might help dissuading tensions, and it might allow Kashmir to finally decide, because there have been, Kashmir wanted independence as well from the start. So do you think this will help?
Those who talk about the plebiscite mentioned in the UN resolution forget that the prerequisite is Pakistan must first move out of all of Kashmir. Pakistan must take back the portion of Jammu and Kashmir which it gave to China and give full control to the Indian authorities, and then the plebiscite should happen. This is factual. Now, a plebiscite is like a referendum, and you know, our constitutional system neither in 1947 nor now provides for a referendum. In our case, Parliament is the voice of the people which will decide. Now, I don't know how referendums are going in this country. But I just wanted to say that the option was not there for any of the 550 odd states to choose a third option. They had to choose India or Pakistan. I gave you the example of Mayurbhanj in my state, which hung on for 3 months. There were many others, but that option was not there. And it was not a whimsical decision. It came after a long freedom struggle involving the people of the entire subcontinent. And so it is the legitimate thing to say that India has the only legitimacy to have Jammu and Kashmir included in it.
Yeah. See, on that question of the plebiscite, initially when India said that yes, we'll take the opinion of the people of Kashmir, that was when Kashmir was free to hold a plebiscite. Now, if an occupied part of Kashmir by Pakistan, a plebiscite is not possible. And that is something that it cannot happen under these present conditions. That has been India's stated position, whatever party you may belong to. And that is the correct position. And that is why, you see, again, the point is that it is not correct to say none of these princely states had no option. The Mountbatten Accord, according to which the partition took place, gave the option to every princely state to choose between India and Pakistan. And when the choice came, there were 3 states that said we chose to be independent. Mayurbhanj did not say that. Mayurbhanj was taking time, but the states of Hyderabad, Junagadh and Jammu and Kashmir, all 3 said we don't want to join either, we want to be independent, give us time. That is why when the 15th of August 1947, none of these states were part of India. They came into part of India when after the Indian army had to go under special circumstances into J&K, when Maharaja then had asked for the army to protect J&K from the invaders, Pakistani invaders. That is when they went, but army went into Hyderabad, which is called the police action. The army went to Junagadh, and it is...
Excuse me, sir. No interruptions. No interruptions. Excuse me, sir. Please stop speaking. Excuse me, sir.
Yes, sir, there are truths and there are truths and there are truths. Like there are people and there are people and there are people. So let us now to talk about the facts of the case that has happened. Indian Army had to go in 1947. So, I mean, that's why many in Junagadh also questioned that there was, plebiscite after the army went in and took over. So, let's not get into that issue. So, the point is there was a choice. Mountbatten Accord gave the choice. And that is where I think the colonial masters who denied the possibility of a referendum here, you have your referendums, and I wish you all the best for the early election, winter election. I believe only in 1923, Britain went to elections in December, and then you're almost a century later going to do that. We wish you all the best. But let democracy in India prevail according to what is there in this constitution. Thank you.
Dr. Chair. We'll have time for one more question before we conclude the debate, and I look to the member in the third row.
Hi. Thank you both for the debate so far. My question is more forward-looking. Now that we have the situation on our hands, what, according to each of you, should be the next and most sensible step for Kashmir?
A little louder, please. I can't hear.
What, according to you, now that this situation has already happened, would be the best way forward for Kashmir and the government of India to handle?
I'll just take a moment to rebut a factual wrong there. On 15th of August, Mayurbhanj had not signed the instrument of accession. There was no choice except to join either India or Pakistan. That's the point I was making. And I think on that we agree. But there were more than 3 states. The way forward is really what we should focus on. Let me repeat this with utmost humility. There is no intention in the BJP or in the government of India and in the broader policy-making circles of India to treat this as some kind of a triumph. We do not have a triumphalist attitude. Our attitude is that Jammu and Kashmir is an integral part of India through legitimately developing after independence, the way the rules applied to everybody. And we treat every citizen of India in Jammu and Kashmir as ours. They will have the same rights, same protections as everywhere else in the country. I have talked about how people in India over the past 72 years have come a very long way. And in Jammu and Kashmir, there will be a concerted effort to make investments that go to the ground. We had a very good development just a few days ago. We had block development council elections for the first time since 1947. This happens everywhere in the rest of the country. These are indirect elections. We had panchayat elections at the village level a year ago, and these electors who got elected with a legitimate turnout of 74% at that time, 25,000 of these electors participated in electing block development councils just now. What does this mean? This means fiscal devolution down to the block level. A block is a part of a district. Now, the kind of corruption that existed at the state level. Now, if you there's plenty of media coverage of Jammu and Kashmir. You'll see that the people of Jammu and Kashmir have a lot of anger against local politicians, irrespective of the fact that many of them are detained because of the incendiary speeches some of them were making. Anybody who owes allegiance to the state of India, to the Constitution of India, will have full freedoms to participate in the political process. But a whole new generation of politicians are coming up, being elected at the state level. There will be investments to bring about educational institutes, to bring about industry, to bring about hotels. There is a terrible dearth of infrastructure to take advantage of the tourism opportunities that Jammu and Kashmir provides. And don't buy into this lockdown narrative. Please see for yourself, at least those of you who are Indian citizens, go and visit Jammu and Kashmir. There is no restrictions.
Dr. Yechuri, your response to conclude the debate.
Yeah, final comments. Thank you. I'll come first. I'll answer the question, and then I'll come to some of the points which are very tempting not to leave unanswered. Well, the question is, what is the way forward? Since I was the first Indian political person who could breach the Iron Curtain in Srinagar and enter, I had a chance to talk to some people, though I was under police custody. But some people, I mean, who were there, who were attending to us, and the question they asked me is that, is Kashmir going to be India's Gaza Strip? And that is something which is, I mean, I was alarmed to hear that. I, of course, was trying to say, no, no, we are all there, we'll fight for you. I mean, we are all there to do that. I mean, that won't be allowed. But that is the mindset that is growing. Now, that is what is dangerous. What is the way forward? Way forward is what this BJP government itself promised to the people of Jammu and Kashmir and the people of India after the parliamentary delegation visited, of which I was a member, that we will immediately start the political process of a dialogue with all stakeholders about the future of J&K. Now, that process of involvement of the people and leaders of Jammu and Kashmir needs to take place. That cannot happen with one election to the BDC, which has got an electoral college of those who elected earlier to the panchayats and sarpanches, and these are local bodies, which is part of the Indian Constitution. And of these elections, 56% of that electoral college is unelected now. It doesn't represent. The other 44% is what had voted in these elections. Yes, these elections took place correctly. The results are there also for all to see. I mean, where the people chose to vote. But that is, again, what I say, democracy is not only about elections. It's about human life and liberty. And that assurance has to be given by India. And for that, we have to do a lot of hard work and involve the leaders and people of Kashmir. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yechuri. That concludes the debate. Thank you all for joining us this evening, and please join me in thanking both participants.